Okay, so what if your final exam wasn't about what you learned, but who you'd have to kill to survive? Yeah, that is the absolutely brutal core of the film After the Dark. It's basically a thought experiment masquerading as a philosophy class. So let's break this whole thing down.
Right from the get-go, the movie throws this question right at you. An apocalypse is hitting. There's a bunker, but it's only got room for 10 people. You've got to survive in there for 1 year and then, rebuild society. So who do you save? And maybe more importantly, who do you leave behind to die? It's a heavy choice, and it's the one these characters are forced to make.
So the whole story takes place in a philosophy class in Jakarta. It's the very last day of school. And their professor, this guy named Zimit, he tells them their final exam isn't going to be some boring old paper. Oh no, it's going to be a practical, incredibly high-stakes thought experiment.
Okay, this is really important to get. None of this is actually happening. It's all hypothetical, right? It's a thought experiment, just playing out inside the students' imaginations. The whole point is to test their beliefs without anyone actually getting hurt. But as we're about to see, the line between this little game and reality, well, it gets pretty blurry, pretty fast.
So, Zimit lays out the rules, and they're pretty clear. Rule number 1, a nuclear apocalypse is happening like right now. 2, there's a bunker nearby. It can keep exactly 10 people alive for 1 year. 3, you just have to survive that year. And 4, the big one, when you get out, your job is to repopulate the entire planet. Simple, right? No pressure.
All right, for their first go at this, the group, with Zimit leading the charge, tries to solve it with just cold, hard logic. Their whole philosophy is about utility. In other words, who is the most useful? Who has the practical skills to rebuild everything? It sounds like a smart approach, but yeah, we're going to see how that works out for them.
And the choices they make are, well, they're harsh. You've got the farmer, the engineer, the doctor. They're in. Obvious, practical skills, right? But then you have the poet, the fashion designer, the real estate agent. They're out. If your skills aren't considered essential, you're left behind. It's absolutely brutal, but from a purely logical standpoint, it kind of makes sense.
And this is where Zimit takes that logic to a really, really dark place. When the group decides to leave the poet behind, he doesn't just let her go. He shoots her. In his justification, he calls it a mercy killing. To save her from a slow, awful death from radiation poisoning. I mean, wow. That one act just shows you how ruthless he is and completely cements his control over this whole experiment.
But of course, this super logical approach completely blows up in their faces. The students are understandably terrified of him, so they lock Zimit out of the bunker. He dies from the radiation, but not before he drops a little bombshell on them. Only he knew the exit code. So a year goes by, they survive the apocalypse, but now they're just trapped in their own little metal tomb, about to run out of air. The lesson? Pure logic, total epic failure.
Okay, so back in the real-world classroom, Zimit hits the reset button. Time for round 2, but this time he adds a pretty nasty twist. He wants to see what happens to all their perfect, cold logic when you throw in the messy, unpredictable factor of, well, being human.
And this new variable, it changes the entire game. Now, each student's job card also has a hidden secret on it, something that could totally mess with the group's survival. Suddenly, the decisions aren't just about, can you build a house? It's about your character, your health, all these messy personal secrets.
And you can see how the choices just get turned upside down. Take James, the farmer. He's still super valuable, but his secret is that he's gay, which, complicates the whole repopulate the earth thing. And the doctor, who was a no-brainer before, now she's out because her secret is that she's carrying a deadly virus. But of course, the artists, the poet, the opera singer, they're still considered useless. Go figure.
So inside the bunker this time, Zimit just goes full-on tyrant. He's completely obsessed with repopulation. First, he demands everyone pair up. When that doesn't work, he basically suggests a free-for-all where every man has to be with every woman. Yeah, this, as you can imagine, pushes the group right to the edge, and a soldier named Bonnie flat out refuses. Things get tense.
And that tension just explodes. There's a struggle for Zimit's gun, and it sets off this massive explosion that kills everyone. So there you have it. Logic plus secrets also equals a big fat failure. But then, there's a really important little detail. James realizes that Zimit cheated. He deliberately gave James the gay card just to mess with him and manipulate the whole experiment.
At this point, the class is pretty much done. They're ready to just give up. But Petra, who's the top student, she insists on one more go. And this time, she's going to be in charge. And her approach? It's completely different. Petra just completely flips the script.
She throws Zimmet's cold logic right out the window. She argues that survival isn't just about, building shelters, it's about preserving the soul of humanity. So her criteria for who gets in the bunker, it's not about being useful, it's about creativity, passion, and the power to give people hope.
And just look at the group she picks. The poet, the opera singer, the fashion designer, all the people Zimmet literally called worthless, they're the first ones she picks to go in. And the biggest rejection of all, she leaves Zimmet himself out. Petra knows that for this to work, his toxic, controlling personality has to be gone.
And her reasoning is pretty profound. She basically says she chose people who could make their last year on Earth meaningful and beautiful, even if they couldn't guarantee that humanity would survive long term. And inside her bunker, they read poetry, they listen to opera, they create things. They don't just survive, they actually live.
So if we look at the scorecard here, it's pretty clear. Zimmet's 2 attempts, both based on pure logic, catastrophe. Petra's 1 shot, guided by humanity and art, a year of hope and meaning. It seems like we have a winner, right? The only successful strategy. But hold on, the story is not over yet.
Yeah, just when you think you've got the lesson all figured out, humanity over logic, the movie just pulls the rug right out from under you. In the last few minutes, the entire thought experiment is suddenly seen in a completely new light.
So you really have to stop and ask yourself, after setting up 2 scenarios designed to fail while Petra succeeded on her very first try, what was Zimmet's real reason for this whole exercise?
Because it turns out the truth wasn't in the philosophy. The whole debate, logic versus art, utility versus humanity, it was all just a smokescreen.
It was all about something much, much more personal. It was about a secret relationship. Yep, here's the twist. We find out that Professor Zimmet and Petra, his best student, are having an affair. And this entire final exam, it was just Zimmet's twisted, messed up way of lashing out at her, of trying to prove that her feelings for another student, James, were a mistake that would lead to disaster.
So we cut back to the real world for the last time. Class is over. Petra breaks things off with Zimmet for good and leaves with James. And the very last thing we see is Zimmet all alone in his room with a gun on his desk. The screen fades to black, and we hear a single gunshot.
And that leaves us with this one haunting question. Was any of this really a deep philosophy lesson about the best way for humanity to survive? Or was it just the dark, destructive fantasy of a jealous lover who lost an argument? The movie doesn't tell you. It leaves that for you to figure out.